Hey everyone, Kevin here. I have said this consistently to transitioning teachers in coffee chats, support groups, on the podcast, and in numerous posts on LinkedIn, but I realize I don't think I've ever explicitly said it here. When you leave teaching, you need to get used to the fact that corporate doesn't function on a school year schedule. Now, back when I touched on the ideas of breaking a teaching contract and how the hours are better outside of teaching, I probably alluded to this, but there's enough to talk about that it warrants its own conversation, really. And the reason why is because teachers coming out of education are naturally going to struggle with changing their mindsets about the calendar year because from the time they were 5 years old until when they transitioned, that's the only life they've ever known. Sure, the schedule of the day changed between high school and college, but when it came down to it, we mainly all operated on that same Monday through Friday week, starting in August or September and going through May or June. And then you would have your little break until it started all over again, barring if you did summer school, of course. Developmentally, our minds stayed in that mindset for decades without ever realizing one really important point. That's not a normal schedule. It's entirely made up. Frankly, it's actually quite artificial if you really stop and think about it. Plus, if we're being honest, it isn't always conducive to student outcomes either, and makes it so teachers are paid even less since almost none of us actually got paid over summer break. That's not even factoring in the parent schedules, which don't miraculously change over the summer either. I remember just how stressed and burned out I was, too, trying to get more done than I ever could in that limited time frame. In the end, it was really toxic. Now, this is a really roundabout way of getting there, but the point I'm trying to make is that when you leave teaching and walk into a normal job, you realize how much better it is from a scheduling point of view. Not only are the hours frequently more set in stone and realistic, but you don't have to live what I've always termed break to break anymore. I remember, and I'm sure all of you listening remember, being in the first week of October or April and knowing exactly how many days you had until your next 30 weekend or holiday. It was a really unsustainable way to live and work. Taking this a step further, without that restrictive teaching contract that you said you worked for 10 months, you come to understand that you don't have to wait until the summer to find a job anymore as well. This is always another big point that I have to get transitioning teachers to wrap their minds around. Companies hire all year round because people leave, move around, or they have a new need at some point. Schools tend to plan the master's schedule for the following year in January or February and decide on it by March. I remember here, March 15th was our cutoff date for rehire or firing, and it's why we called it the Ides of March because of that. Afterwards, they would start posting job openings in April and May and do most of their hiring in June and July. It has changed a little since so many of us have left, but that is still the general idea. If you don't get hired in that time frame, well, then you would often be screwed until the next hiring cycle. But indifferently, corporate isn't like that. Businesses function on quarters where they break the year into four parts that clearly delineate the path the company takes during each 3 month period. Often they do quarterly business reviews or QBRs as well to gauge progress toward goals throughout the year. This is also why they hire whenever they need someone. And that's why you have to get out of the mindset of, I need a job by the end of the summer. Now, sure, I know you need a paycheck, but know that you can get picked up by a company any time of the year. I got hired for my current role in December, for Pete's sake, a time I would have never been hired as an educator unless something uncharacteristically bizarre happened for a district to hire someone mid year. So, not only is breaking free from the school year calendar extremely liberating from a mental health standpoint, because you can take actual days off and plan your year more naturally with the, calendar year, but also it's liberating from a hiring standpoint. You no longer have to make do or stick it out until the next hiring season. Being in corporate now, you need to get used to always having options throughout the entire year. Sure, there are occasional downtimes where there isn't as strong of a hiring push, but someone is always hiring nonetheless. No longer do you need to feel like you are out of luck when August comes around and you have yet to find a job. It isn't ideal if you haven't, sure, but it isn't the defining situation it used to be. You have so many more options now and aren't restricted to what has rapidly become a kind of ridiculous school schedule. You aren't beholden to that anymore. And even though I know it is a hard thing to wrap your mind around, and it takes a little bit of time to retune your brain to, you will quickly realize how much better and natural it feels to be operating using the normal January through December calendar year and enjoying the seasons pass in ways you never got to before. I know that I notice seasons and weather changes so much more since I left teaching, and I am no longer stuck in a classroom all day, which allows me to do that. I can do more and enjoy things that I would never have had the ability to while on a school schedule. It just feels right in a way rather than it being artificial. And as always, if you need help wrapping your mind around these differences or getting out of teaching into a normal calendar year for probably the first time in your life, I'm always here to help. See you next time.